You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts, truth, research, and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know, whether fans like it or not. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at michigansportstruth.weebly.com, follow us on Twitter at Michigan_truth, and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth. Also listen to us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.
And welcome to episode 322 of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast Week in Review edition. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Buck Geno. Follow me on Twitter personally at DT2Phillips. Also follow Buck Geno on Twitter at BuckGeno3, 3 eyes for Roman numerals. It's free agency time here, so why don't we get the Red Wings signings out of the way. The Red Wings re-signed Mike Green to a 2-year, $10.75 million deal. They bring back Thomas Vanek, a forward from the Vancouver Canucks, and sign him to a 1-year, $3 million deal. And they signed backup goaltender Jonathan Bernier from the Colorado Avalanche to a 3-year, $9 million deal.
You stupid.
And just 3 more block prospects from making the team, from making the NHL. As you would know, that's just Ken Holland trying to overspend Chris Ilitch's money and wasting in the process. The good thing about it is, though, as bad as it seems, the good thing about it is, though, it's making Chris Ilitch wanting to have no alternative to sell the Red Wings sometime in the future.
Well, we've talked about this with the Pistons and Tom Gores. When it comes to the salary cap league, the NBA is a little bit different than the NHL when you talk about cap penalties. The NHL is a hard, you will not go over it, you cannot go over it. But the same principle remains that you don't need to be spending to the top of the cap to miss the playoffs. You can spend far less money to do so. And the free agency started actually early this week, which is late after our last episode for the Week in Review. The 2 restricted free agents were signed by Detroit. Tyler Bertuzzi got a 2-year deal for $1.4 million per. And then Martin Ferk, who was actually not given a qualifying offer, which would have been 110% of his 2017-18 salary, actually received a 1-year deal for just over $1 million. So a player that we expected to be signed, which was Tyler Bertuzzi, and a player that they didn't expect to sign because they didn't give him a qualifying offer and didn't want to go to arbitration. They ended up giving him more money than they would have had they done the qualifying offer. So they didn't want to go to arbitration, but then they gave him $300,000 more than they could have qualified him at. So that gives you the type of ineptness that you're going to be dealing with when you're talking about Ken Holland and free agency. Ken Holland has been very bad in free agency, except for a couple of years, really throughout his career as the Detroit GM. I mean, he just hasn't been very good at it. And when you go down to Koshik, who was dropped in his lap, it wasn't a signing as much as it was a trade. And then you had Marian Hossa, who approached the Red Wings. Detroit didn't reach out to him. It was the other way around. It's hard to find some real good free agent signings other than 2002, when Detroit signed everybody they could and built a relative all-star team. Now with the cap, it's a completely different scenario. They signed 3 guys today. One of them was Jonathan Bernier, I actually think this is probably the best deal out of the three. Number one, he's a guy that can start the NHL. He's not that great, but you have Jimmy Howard, who's on the last year of his deal. He's getting older, and without any real prospects that are NHL ready, now that Peter Mrazek's out of the organization, and the guys in the AHL are certainly not NHL ready. I think it's a pretty good move because now you're able to lock up Jonathan Bernier for 3 years. If you use him as a backup, a high-end backup's probably going for right about that right now. When you look at Cam Ward, Carter Hutton, other guys that are signing to be backups, $2.5 to $3 million a year, seems pretty reasonable. I don't know if Jonathan Bernier deserves more than Cam Ward, but it is what it is. If I was Cam Ward, maybe if I would have known that they were going to hand out $9 million for 3 years, I might have told the Blackhawks no and gave Ken Howland a call. But Jonathan Bernier, like I said, he can start in the NHL. Jimmy Howard's on the last year of his contract, and if push comes to shove, and Jimmy Howard isn't re-signed after this year, which is a 50-50 bet with Ken Howland at the helm, really, you're looking at a guy who can at least pull you through 40 or 50 games. The one thing that he does have, as far as a knock against him, is the injury bug does seem to bite him a little bit more than normal. And when you want a guy to start, that's kind of important that he not get hurt. But the same can be said for Jimmy Howard, who seems to get dinged up here, pretty much yearly now. The other two signings, we've talked about one at length with Mike Green. It was put out a while ago that Detroit was talking to Mike Green about signing a deal. There was 1 year and 2 year deals on the table, according to reports. And it ends up Mike Green is going to get a $10.75 million 2 year deal. Now, a 1 year deal I could have almost stomached because even though they would have been blocking somebody for a year, chances are that they would have been traded at the deadline again, which means that you'd still get to bring them up for the last quarter of the season and see what they can do. Also injury prone and coming off of spine surgery, isn't exactly the picture of health. So that would have made sense at least for the 1 year deal, because if something happens, no big deal. It's a 1 year deal and you're done. It's a 1 year contract and you can be done with it after this year. But instead they gave him 2 years at what I feel is an overpayment of $5.375 million. I don't know if he could have gotten that anywhere else, coming off of a spine surgery that ended his season last year. But Detroit and Ken Howland, as they are wont to do, outbid themselves and pay him more than probably the market would have bared. Then you have Thomas Vanek, who's the last signing of today. Bernier and Green had pretty much agreed to those contracts before today. They just had to wait to make it official on July 1st, which is the opening date for free agency in the NHL. And then Thomas Vanek, who had been starting to be mentioned a little bit more, that rumor started to gain some traction this week, and indeed it came true. He's signed for a 1 year, $3 million deal. It also has a no trade clause in it, which makes zero sense because it's a 1 year deal. The only reason that you would bring him on is so that you could trade him at the deadline. I don't know why you need to spend $3 million for a third or fourth round pick. But it's really the worst signing out of all three. And the reason I say that is because they could have iced a much younger lineup this year. They didn't need additional players up front. They have plenty of guys that are going to be much cheaper that are available to play. They have Philip Zadina, who's their first-round draft pick from this year. They have Michael Rasmussen, who's their first-round draft pick from last year. And they have other guys in Grand Rapids as far as defense that are ready to play, at least get more than an audition within the NHL level. Joe Hickens came up for a couple games last year. He probably could stand to at least start the season in Detroit. You have Phil Peronic, who's a right-handed shot and does basically what Mikey Green does for what would essentially be a much cheaper contract. And because you're supposed to be rebuilding, that would be the play that I would think would be happening, would be that Phil Peronic would fill that spot that Mike Green was vacating, the right-handed power play quarterback role. He could get him 10 to 12 minutes a night maybe if your special teams need a little boost, and there's some penalties called, maybe he gets a little bit more, but you can hide him on the third pair and then bring him up to the power play usage. That's what rebuilding teams do. Rebuilding teams don't sign three guys who are on the back nine of their career to relatively exorbitant deals when nobody else is bidding against them. That's what Ken Holland is known for. So he took all the goodwill that he got from the NHL draft, with all the good picks that they made, with all the things that they did, in basically a week and a half, took it, stomped on it, poured gas on it, burned it, and buried it, because it's the same old stuff with the Detroit Red Wings and Ken Holland. Stupid signings that don't need to happen. Like I said, I think Jonathan Bernier is probably the only one that needed to actually happen, because they just don't have any goalies right now that can play in the NHL. They just don't have any. Jared Crow has already told him that he's going to go look for other work because he doesn't want to get exposed players and go back down to Grand Rapids, which is fine.
That's a shame.
He wasn't really. I mean, it's a shame for him, but I mean, he's not going to get a chance to be even a starter with Detroit. And if you're a professional athlete, that's what your goal is, right? Your goal is to be a starter for a big league club. I don't know if he's really that capable, but that's not for me to decide. But he's going to try somewhere else because he just doesn't want to go for another year in Grand Rapids. And like I said, that's something that I can see why that would happen. So it really leaves you with a pretty big hole as far as goalies go, because they have a lot of goalies that are in the system, but there are not any goalies that have a lot of pro experience. Matija Hofsky is really the one that is the highest tenure that is even perhaps close to being ready, and that's just for the AHL, as he made his AHL debut last year, and he'll almost certainly be with the Griffins this year. There's a lot of other guys that they have. Caden Fulcher, who played for Sarnia last year. Keith Petrozelli, who played at Quinnipiac University, and formerly was with Muskegon Lumberjacks of the USHL. So they have guys in waiting, but you can't be sticking 19 to 20-year-old guys up in the AHL or the NHL, and especially as a goalie, expect big things to happen. Marc-Andre Fleury did it, and he played for a terrible team. It took him a while to get good. So you can't just stick a young guy in goal, especially at the higher levels now, and expect them to do good things. So there's really a big gap there for Detroit as far as prospects go for goalies. But that's not true for anything else. They have the guys that they can put in. They literally could have gotten away with just signing Jonathan Bernier or some other backup goalie and just been done. And they wouldn't have had to do anything else as far as unrestricted free agency is concerned. They could have signed nobody, and they would have been fine. They would have had a chance to play a lot of young guys in the lineup. They would have had a chance to see what they had. There's really just no believability that they're going to contend at all this year. So to sign guys like Vanek and Green, all that does is push guys that are prospects back further, because you're not playing them in the NHL. Mike Green is off of spine surgery, for God's sake. I don't wish him ill, but I mean, if he gets hurt, that's something that he might have to think about retirement. And you're going to sign a guy who's a one bad hit away from retirement to a 2-year, $5.375 million deal. Now you can hide him on long-term IR. It's just stupid signing. And coming into this week, with all the NHL draft stuff and all the guys, that were excited, including me, that they might actually do this rebuild the right way. Today was just a screeching halt to that, and a sobering reality that Ken Holland is who he is, which is a bumbling fool that has no idea how to construct a roster or actually how to perform a rebuild. So that doesn't mean they're even done. There's a lot of table scraps that are still left as far as free agency. I don't know what else they'll be able to do. They have restricted free agents that have to be paid. Anthony Andreas Athanasiou and Dylan Larkin also are in need of new contracts. That's another stupid part about these free agent signings. Is I don't think that you could probably sign all three of those guys for basically what you gave Grady and maybe Bernier. Vanek. You could have literally just said, no, we're not going to sign Green and Vanek. We're just going to sign our restricted free agents to decent bridge deals and call it good. And they would have saved themselves money. So to your point about Chris Illich being disappointed, by signing Thomas Vanek and Mike Green isn't going to put butts in the seats. It's not. I don't know why Ken Holland continues to believe that if you sign these guys and they're competitive and they're going to compete. I mean, I would rather him just say, look, we're going to put the young guys out there, and I guarantee you that they would sell just as many or more tickets. I've seen a lineup that has Zadina, Rasmussen, Mantha, Anthony, Larkin, Ferg, Bertuzzi, just to name the guys that are younger on the lineup every night, and say, you're going to get to watch these guys. Yeah, they're going to stink. They're not going to win a ton of games. But it would be far better to watch those guys because at least there's a future. I don't need to see Thomas Vanek. I know what he can do. Yeah, he's still a pretty decent scorer, but that's literally all he can do. There's nothing that he's going to be able to do for this team. And don't tell me, well, he's going to mentor the young people. They already have guys that can do that. Or are supposed to be able to do that at least. They have those guys. They have veterans on the team already. You don't need more. So Ken Holland trying to spew that is also an affront. But it's just, like I said, we thought that they maybe were actually going to do things the right way. A draft pick fell into their lap. They actually did something with it this time instead of like before when Jacob Chikrin tumbled all the way down to them and they ended up trading Pavel Dantz's dead contract to Arizona so they could draft Jenna Schalowski instead. We thought maybe this was on the right path, but the free agency and Ken Holland just have never really meshed. And it would be better if somebody told him that free agency started a month later next year, and then he just didn't know if he could sign all these people and they'd already all be gone. Because that's probably the only way that you're going to get him to not sign guys that are going to be useless. Literally tell him, hey, they moved the free agency date to August 1st, so we can't sign anybody until then. And then when he gets to try to sign everybody, everybody signed, it's too bad. Everybody else already signed with somebody else and messed it up. It's the only way you're going to be able to keep him from scratching checks to guys that are too old to do really anything for the team. So we'll grade this later, but as you can tell from my ranting diagram, it's pretty bad. And free agency is a big disappointment for a lot of people, myself, that thought they actually might have some sort of light at the end of the tunnel chance that Ken Holland was going to do this rebuild correctly and throw a bunch of young guys up there and just see what happens.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Good points. Keeping old, washed up, and beat up, long in the tooth veterans, and giving them a lot of money. Just they're probably just going to give them a lot of money just to pay for their health insurance bills and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what they're going to need. And we didn't even hit on the fact, and we'll probably come back to a little bit later, that Henrik Zetterberg, the yearly summer retirement rumors are starting to rumble for him again. And people asked Ken Holland about it, and he basically just passed the buck back on to Henrik Zetterberg and said, well, if he says he's ready, then he'll be ready. If he's not, then we'll find that out later. I mean, why would you want to know if your captain is going to come back right before free agency starts? I mean, let's just see what happens.
Right. So there you go. And we get to our What's Your Grade segment at the end of the show. But transitioning, speaking of which, to the Pistons.
Left sideline, three, and he answers.
The Pistons make a free agency signing of their own. They signed former Michigan Wolverine and Indiana Pacer guard Glenn Robinson to a 2-year, $8.3 million contract.
Oh, man. Holy stupid!
And Ed Smith has got to be in love with this one, but we got to analyze this first.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're talking about the Pistons, their roster has been pretty well set, right? We're kind of hard against the cap.
Yep.
There wasn't a lot of guys on the team last year.
Nope.
That were going to be unrestricted free agents. The one guy that was, Anthony Tolliver, has been courted by their teams, LA Clippers and New York Knicks.
Right.
They both contacted Anthony Tolliver. Well, Anthony Tolliver is a guy that he's a 6'8". I guess if you want to call him a stretch three, they list him as a small / power forward. I don't know, a 6'8" power forward that's real good in the NBA. So we'll call him a three, basically a wing player. And in the NBA, wing depth and wing talent is going to get you a lot of places. And so I think that the trade-off for Anthony Tolliver going somewhere else and bringing Glenn Robinson to the third end is kind of a wash. But they obviously weren't interested in bringing Tolliver back. Perhaps Tolliver was asking more than what they ended up giving Glenn Robinson the third. So, it's not real big news other than the fact that the Pistons did make a move. But it's kind of like a dollar for dollar trade with somebody because they get Glenn Robinson the third for, you said 8.3 for 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, $8.3 million contract, 2 years for Glenn Robinson the third. Yep, the former Michigan Wolverine.
So 4.15 a year. Anthony Tolliver last year made 3.29. So a real big jump. And if Anthony Tolliver at age 33 thinks he's going to get a lot more than that, well, the Knicks and the Clippers are the kind of teams that will do that. They have a little bit bigger wallets than the Pistons do, and maybe a little bit big. So I feel like this is a decent move for the Pistons because it replaces Tolliver, who was not in the rotation a ton, but was a guy that they could use. And I think Glenn Robinson's going to fill that same role. I mean, he's not going to drive them to the Eastern Conference Championship by any means, but they fill a spot that they felt was going to be open. And Anthony Tolliver's done, and now Glenn Robinson the third is here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a slight jump. Go figure. In terms of money and age. So there you go. Speaking of the Pistons, this may positively affect their Central Division play, and I'm gonna spew this out right now. LeBron James leaves the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the Detroit Pistons' division rivals, and signs a 4-year, $154 million deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's a lot of money, and that's a long time. 4 years, sort of. But the point is, the Pistons don't have to deal with LeBron James in Cleveland anymore. Or, as a matter of fact, not as much, but still a little bit when they play the Lakers at home and on the road once each, a game each.
Yeah, I mean, our focus is on the Michigan team, so we're not going to go into the whole LeBron thing as far as all the things that it's going to affect around the league. But it's definitely going to affect the Pistons in the Central Division. It's going to definitely affect the Eastern Conference. I mean, obviously the power has shifted pretty much to the entire Western Conference, save Boston. And this is going to give the Detroit Pistons an opportunity now that the progress is supposed to be there with Dwayne Casey. They're looking to make the playoffs. Well, one of those obstacles has been removed because I don't think Cleveland's going to be very good. I know Kevin Love's still there. I know they have a couple other players, but LeBron James is that team, or was that team.
Yeah.
So you take him out of the equation, they become a barely 500 team probably.
Oh, yeah. Cleveland's going to become mediocre again, to say the least.
Right. So they're not going to be very good, no matter who they sign.
The Pistons are going to become a lot better on their own with their own roster and with their head coach. And if you match up the two teams, the Pistons are going to dominate the Cleveland Cavaliers, period. Just in the matchup.
Well, it's a roundabout way of getting addition by subtraction because now the Central Division has a spot open up because the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
I cannot see them being Central Division champions. Now, that doesn't mean that the Pacers and the Bucks aren't going to need to be dealt with. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are at the top of that division, are not going to be. And so now that spot opens up. There's going to be other teams in that derby now that are going to be looking to jump on that as well, and the Pistons are one of those teams.
Yeah. But as far as that matchup goes, that's another little something I can hardly wait for. And yet another thing I can wait for is the Pistons matching up with the Celtics. That should be interesting.
Yeah, talking about former Pistons, Aaron Baines, who I know you really like.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
He signed a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Celtics to return.
Oh, good for him to stay. Right. Well, bring him on. The Pistons, unfortunately, no longer have Boban Marjanovic, who's only good offensively in the post, but I guess he's a little too expensive now. The Pistons still have to pay him the rest of his $21 million 3-year contract when he's with the Los Angeles Clippers. But they have just only one backup center, and that's Eric Moreland. I forgot about how Dwayne Casey's going to develop him, Eric Moreland.
Yeah, I really think they're going to need to concentrate on, again, their roster is what it is. The Glenn Robinson move doesn't move the dial one way or the other, really, for me. They're still kind of the same team. But they get a little more athletic. They get a little more offensive punch. Because Anthony Calver is, he's just another guy. And I think Glenn Robinson is just another guy. But he's got a little bit of offense that he can bring out. But like I said, this doesn't move the meter for me one way or the other. This is still pretty much the same Pistons roster, just maybe a couple different names in place. And the dollar signs are pretty much the same. So, it is what it is. But the Pistons weren't going to make a big free agency splash because they didn't have the money, or they weren't going to spend the money to go into the luxury tax. So, this is kind of a reciprocal move for Anthony Calver, saying he's going to get out of town.
Right. So, that's all you need to know for Pistons. So we'll keep an eye on the Pistons free agency move. Any more Pistons free agency moves when they come. I'm pretty sure. Basketball rosters are so small. They might not make another one or any too many more if any. Probably just one more.
They might sign some guys for summer league or for G League purposes, 2-way contracts. Those sort of things always kind of get sifted out through the summer, but obviously major moves. I just don't hear any rumblings, and just don't think there's anybody that are ready to really take on any of the Pistons players. The one thing I have heard, and this is not a rumor necessarily, but just if they can find somebody to unload somebody like a Langston Galloway, and maybe maybe a couple of younger players that haven't developed, and make some room that way. They could do that, but other than that, there's really just not a lot of moves available for me.
Yeah, leave it to Dwayne Casey and his coaching staff. They have the development system, truly, but hopefully Eric Moreland can be developed. But that being said, it's time to transition to the one team left that we have to cover, and that's the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
They get swept at home by the red-hot Oakland Athletics, who got demolished by the Cleveland Indians today, which was a fluke. By the way, Josh Lucas, I think, was the pitcher that really got his ass handed to in an 8 spot in the 8th inning by the Cleveland Indians. It was a 5-3 Cleveland lead going into the 8th inning, but that's kind of the AL Comedy Central watch. The Indians win, and so do the Tigers, 9-1 over the Toronto Blue Jays, ending their 11-game losing streak. They beat the Blue Jays at Rogers Center 9-1 after losing 2 close games, evidently. One of them on Friday 3-2, and then 4-3 Saturday on a blown 3-0 lead, and then a walk-off home run by Justin Smoke in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Tigers didn't score any runs until the 5th inning when they dropped a 5 spot, highlighted by the Nick Castellanos grand slam. Now, granted, people are still loving Nick Castellanos just because of his offense, but they need to realize his defense is still really bad. I keep checking his defensive metrics, and they're really bad. His defensive WAR, negative 1.5.
You are pathetic!
Yeah, he's obviously a one-dimensional player for a team that isn't expected to do much. There's not a spot for him necessarily as far as other than right field. They're not going to put him at third base because they want to play Heimer, Candelario, and other guys. They want to develop other players. Nick Castellanos, that ship has kind of sailed on the development. Now it's kind of just tread water. And with all the things that are going to happen this offseason, people are really speculating that they could move him to first base, to platoon with Miguel Cabrera if he does come back from that ruptured bicep tendon, and really find a spot there. Right field's not really his gig, but they need his bat, so that's where they're going to put him. You just look at the makeup of this team and the 11-game losing streak. They figured out each way to lose that they could. Finally winning today, 9-1. This is not going to be a good team. We've said that from the beginning, and this is not supposed to be a good team.
Yeah, that 9-1 win was a fluke.
I didn't think they were 11-game losing streak bad, but
can't lose them all. That one was a fluke.
Yeah, they proved me wrong on that. But you just look at the team, and Nick Castellanos is really one of the few bright spots in the lineup when it comes to hitting. But as you mentioned, defensively, just not there. It is what it is. They're not a good team, and they've proven as such over the last couple of weeks. And they're playing better teams, and that's what happens when you play better teams. You lose to them. And they've managed to finally win today, but they managed to lose 11 straight to teams that are better than them.
Right. And they got one more in Toronto at 107 on Monday, and then they head to Wrigley Field and play the Chicago Cubs, who were really red hot on the Milwaukee Brewers' tail. Just a half game back in the NL Central. 47-35 are the Cubs. Brewers are 48-35. Those two games, Tuesday and Wednesday at 2:20. That's just a short 2-game set. Thankfully for the Tigers' part, but for us, we need the Cubs to help the Tigers keep losing. Just to make Chris Ilitch sell the team a lot, and he's still dealing with tax issues. You got to combine those two. Again, same thing, like I've mentioned several times. And then they're home against the Texas Rangers for 4, Thursday through Sunday. Texas Rangers are in last place, but don't let that fool you. Their record is almost 500, 38-47, 9 games above 500. That's not as terrible as a last place team should really be. But they're 16.5 games back. Let's not let that fool us either. The Red Sox and Yankees. The Astros and Mariners have really high records. I know the Red Sox, Yankees do, but I got a little off division there. Got in the wrong division, but the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners are duking it out for first place in the AL West in a heavyweight bout, a super heavyweight bout, like in BattleBots. But the Angels are chasing those two teams too. Don't forget, but the Tigers are at home against those Texas Rangers, and I think they could take advantage of that. Except the Rangers are almost, but not quite easy. They're still gonna have to earn it if they want to win. But again, I want your analogy on Chris Bosio's racist comment towards this towards that African American towel collector about and Daniel Stump and his firing. Take it away.
Well, the news broke earlier this week that Chris Bosio was terminated due to the zero tolerance policy of not only Detroit Tigers, but Major League Baseball as a whole. Chris Bosio tried to defend his position by saying first that he was referring to somebody else, and then later talked about how he had spoken to the alleged clubhouse attendant that was the target of the offensive remark. And it's to be real short analysis. When you talk about this situation, there's Chris Bosio's story, and then there's everybody else. And everybody else seems to think that Chris Bosio was making the comment directly at the clubhouse attendant, and Chris Bosio is trying to say that he was directing it at somebody else. Daniel Stump, the relief pitcher from the Detroit Tigers. When you're the only one that's saying that you didn't mean to offend anybody or that you didn't direct a comment towards somebody, yet everybody else that was in the room and heard it is saying that it did indeed happen the way it was described by the clubhouse attendant. It's a tough situation to ignore. So Chris Bosio, his history has been pretty rocky as far as his relationship with the teams that he has been employed by. The Cubs decided not to bring him back after last year, and there were things said about the staff that he oversaw that gave them at least enough ammunition to fire him, other than, hey, we don't like how this guy acts in the clubhouse, we don't like how he talks to our players, we don't like how he handles himself. So there was some speculation that Chris Bosio, when in Chicago, rubbed some guys the wrong way, and it wasn't really expounded upon much past that. But if you read between the lines, basically they were kind of tired of him and how he acted, and then the performance didn't match up where they could really stand to look past that anymore. So the Tigers bring him on, and by all accounts, he was doing his job as a pitching coach. He was helping the younger players develop. He was getting some guys untracked, and he was doing a fair to middling job, and he was doing what they asked of him. But then this incident happens, and for a guy that is doing his job, if somebody's good enough, teams can look past a lot of stuff. This is not one of the things you can look past. And this tells me that there's probably been other incidents, or at least similar things that have happened with Chris Bosio, that he's said the wrong things to the wrong people, or he's rubbed players the wrong way with his instruction or his coaching ability. But as I said, everybody else that has told this story about what Chris Bosio did in the clubhouse, all signs point to he made a stupid mistake, he said something he shouldn't have said, and he got fired. And Chris Bosio trying to paint it as a misunderstanding between a player, and the clubhouse attendant. It just really smells of denial and a failure to stand up for what actually happened. So my thought on this is, if everybody else is saying that he did this, at least in some manner, I mean, not all the stories are the exact same, but they're pretty similar. And then Chris Bosio is trying to defend himself. To me, it feels like Chris Bosio is trying to save his hide so that he can get hired by another team down the road. Because if this happened in the clubhouse, it's inexcusable. And I don't care how good you are at your job, or I don't care how much of a superstar or highly revered coach you are, you can't say those things. and I don't think that there's any place for it. And if everybody else saw it, that witnessed it, and said that, yeah, he did say this, then he's got to go. And that's what happened. Allen for the Cubs, carries some weight because they were the World Series champions 2 years ago.
Oh, yep.
But this is just something you can't look past. And this is not something you can sweep under the rug. Especially when they're going, the aggrieved party is going right to the upper mid saying, hey, this is what happened. And other witnesses are backing up that story. So, whatever the situation that did exactly happen, only those people there will know. But it just can't happen in today's world of professional sports. And I think the Tigers were well within their right, and they made the right call by letting him go and just trying to wash their hands of the whole deal.
Yeah, Ron Gardenhire told the media he's not going to stand for any insensitive comments. A few days after he defended Chris Bosio in a post-game interview, he suddenly had a change of heart, even though he's had a relationship with Chris Bosio in the past. And Ron Gardenhire may be long in the tooth, but at least he thinks right about life in general, and in sports in general, basically, just not advanced.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of managerial decisions that we could take umbrage with, but making the right call. And the other thing for Ron Gardenhire is it's an untenable situation for him, because if he supports Bosio and it's found that Chris Bosio actually is indeed guilty of what happened, then he becomes an enabler. And if he goes with the word of all the other witnesses that are there and tells Al Avila, yeah, this is what happened, we got to let him go, then that's the right path. I mean, he's got to do it for the team, because you can't have that guy sticking around the clubhouse and having the manager defend him, because you're going to lose guys. And from what it sounds like from all the reports is that all the pitchers aren't happy to see him go, but at the same time they understand it. And so there wasn't really any other way the Tigers could have gone but to fire him.
Right. Yeah, they had no choice. Inevitably, that absolutely violated the terms of his contract and violated the club policies. It violated everything within the Tigers organization and Major League Baseball. He like you pointed out, he kept getting fired for many incidents, or at least quite a few, with the Chicago Cubs, for example. And Chris Bosio, like you pointed out off the air, should never be hired by anybody else again in any sport or any team. So that puts the cap on that. One more Tiger topic before we wrap things up. I heard a report from an article from MLive that the Tigers are committed to letting designated hitter Victor Martinez finish his swan song. Speaking of long in the tooth, Victor Martinez, injury-prone, the last year of his contract, 4 years, $68 million. This could mean that Victor Martinez could retire. But like you pointed out several months ago, or a few months ago, about Ken Holland, for example, the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, how can you retire if you don't have a contract afterwards? That got to use that too.
Right. So they're going to let him. They're committed to letting Victor Martinez basically dictate the terms of his departure. And by that they mean we're going to let him bat fourth because we stink and we really don't care. Right. And he's not good anymore. He's 39. He can barely move. He can't hit the ball anymore. But but they're going to keep throwing him out there in the fourth spot because that's where he wants to be. And for a team that's rebuilding, it's a tough message to some of those guys out there because you're basically telling them, hey, look, we already know we stink. So we're just going to let this guy, we're just going to humor him. We're just going to let him bat fourth because that's where he's used to batting. And I don't get why you didn't put him farther down the lineup because you're going to pay him $18 million, so you might as well send him out there. I really don't disagree with him sending him out there and letting him bat because that's the only thing he can do. And not very well, may I add. But to put him at the fourth spot, I mean, you're hamstringing your lineup by putting him there. Why can't he hit seventh or eighth? The designated hitter options for the Tigers are pretty few and far between. I'll grant you that. But to say, well, Victor Martinez is, he's done a lot of things and he's a veteran and all these other things about him, that's fine. But number one, he's not been a Tiger for life. I mean, he's only been there really for the past 7 years. And he doesn't deserve the bat fourth. He doesn't deserve anything other than he's already getting $18 million. He should be happy with just that. He should be happy that he's getting that. Rather than them buying him out or releasing him and trying to find a way to get out of that contract, that's all the respect that he should really garner.
That's all there is. And here's some statistics to prove it. His OPS, like Jeff Moss pointed out, is 623. And his grade chart is an F. Poor. And his batting average is below 250. The last I saw.
He's a negative WAR player that doesn't play in the field.
Offensively, especially.
There's just not much that you can say about it other than they don't have anybody else that's hanging around. And like I said, he's on the team. He's getting paid. So you might as well send him out there. But to bat him fourth is just ludicrous. So the Tigers saying that they're committed to letting him dictate the terms of his departure and how his last season gets played out. It just kind of feels like they've given up on trying to convince him otherwise, and they're just going to let him continue to do what he wants to do. And it just, like I said, it kind of sends the wrong message to the guys that are there that are going to be the keys to this rebuild. Because you're saying, well, we know that we need to get you some experience. We know that we need to build as a team, but we're just going to let this guy bat fourth because we really don't have anything else to do. So, I'm kind of over it. It's just going to continue to happen. This would be more of an issue if they were any sort of good, but they're not. So, I think really, like I said, it's just kind of I don't want to say it's a non-issue, but at this time, there's not really much you can do to fix it. And I think they're just going to let this play out because it's easier than having him throw a fit in the clubhouse that he doesn't get to bat fourth.
Right. So, there you go. That's Tigers Talk, and that is episode... Oh, that's right. We got the What's Your Grade segment, don't we? Hold on.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Well, we only have 3 signings for the Wings, and then we'll get to the Pistons signing Glenn Robinson III. But the Red Wings re-signing Mike Green to a 2-year, $10.75 million deal. What's your grade, Buck?
Well, my grade on the entire scope of free agents for the Red Wings is an F. Because all the things that they say they're going to rebuild upon, they go out and sign 2 guys that really don't need roster spots. And then they get a goalie who I think they overpaid for, but I mean, at least he fills a need. But at the same time, a 3-year contract for a guy like Jonathan Bernier is a little bit much. It gets them past the Jimmy Howard contract, and as I mentioned before, they're devoid of any real prospects in the system that they can bring up to fill some of those roles, both in the AHL and the NHL. So Jonathan Bernier being a backup that is capable of starting games for an extended period of time. I think it's something that was needed. I don't think they needed him for 3 years, but it is what it is. But Mike Green and Thomas Vanek being signed, you're just putting guys in the way of prospects that could benefit from playing time. This is not a team that's going to contend anytime soon, so why not let the young guys get experience and see what they can do and help you rebuild by knowing what you have to be looking for in the draft in future years. Because if you bring those guys up and they stink for some reason, well, fine, then you know what you have to do. But a rebuild, Ken Holland has always been famous for saying that rebuilds can take up to 15 years. Well, they can if you don't actually try to rebuild. And that's what he's doing. He's saying that they're going to rebuild on one hand, and then on the other hand, he's signing past their prime veterans. They're going to be taking roster spots that younger guys could be taking advantage of and showing what they could do. So my grade for free agents for the Detroit Red Wings as far as unrestricted free agents go is an F.
Including Thomas Vanek and Jonathan Bernier, too, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yep, you got to bottle it up. The Wings signings is an F indeed. Blocks all the prospects especially. But on the good side, again, on the good side, like I pointed out, Chris Ilitch's money is going to be well wasted, forcing him to sell the Red Wings as well as the Tigers in the near future. Think about that. Now for the Pistons signing Glenn Robinson III.
I'm going to give this one a B minus. The other reason is because, like I said, it doesn't move the dial for me one way or the other. They're going to lose Anthony Tolliver, and they're going to bring in Glenn Robinson to take his place. It's a pretty lateral move. Yeah, they get younger as far as Glenn Robinson's age is concerned as compared to Anthony Tolliver, but Glenn Robinson III has not had a great pro career. He's just another guy after leaving the University of Michigan after his sophomore season. And he's a role player. And Anthony Tolliver is a role player. They're going to lose Anthony Tolliver in free agency. They pick up a guy that can fill that role, so they do what they can as far as filling the roster up with the parts that they need. I'm going to give a B minus just because, like I said, it doesn't really strike me one way or the other is good or bad. So I'm going to try to go square in the middle.
All right. So that is our What's Your Grade segment. Hang on a second. And for our audience, if they have a grade for each event, post that in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. That's episode 322 of the Week in Review. Just a minute here. Okay, hang on a second. There we go. All right. Had a little technical difficulties with the title of the episode, but that's episode 322 of the Week in Review. Before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is in search of a wider local audience that is fans of sports. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes, its Facebook page, and its Twitter handle at Michigan_Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Buck Geno at BuckGeno III, triple I for Roman numerals. We'll talk to you next week on episode 323 of the Week in Review. Talk to you later, Buck. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Taylor Phillips. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them.